All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here
hmm
with Spencer Penn. Spencer, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Kevin, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me. Big fan. I'm excited for the conversation.
Well, I am too. I am too. And I want to start off by giving a shout out to your PR person, Amber, because I'm going to tell you what, Spencer, Amber, she's a rock star at what she does, man.
hmm
She reached out to me a while back on the quoted platform and she's like, Kev, she goes, I think Spencer would be a really great guest for your podcast. And here's why. And she starts talking you up like nobody's business, man. And I'm like, heck yeah, I want to meet Spencer and get to know him a little. And so we already had that conversation. And so Amber, if you happen to be listening to this, I just like I said, I just want to acknowledge you because you're like really dang good at doing what you do. You know? And so
Yeah, of course.
and,
Well, I agree 100%. She sets the bar also really high for me to make sure that I'm delivering on the promise. And then the second thing is I'm always afraid of people hearing who my PR firm is because they're so good that I want to keep them all to myself. But
well,
but Amber
so
is amazing.
so there you go. Amber, we're not going to let anybody know where you're at or who you work with or nothing. We're just gonna refer you as Amber.
Yeah, maybe that's why I didn't give you the last name pronunciation, Kevin.
You know what? Hey, that's okay. So,
Uh-huh.
well, I'll tell you, I'm just going to start off with a really simple question to get our conversation started, Spencer.
Yep.
What do you do and who do you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Spencer, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of LightSource. We are a procurement AI operating system focused on helping the next generation of manufacturing businesses win on speed to market as well as cost. And so, just by way of background, I I spent most of my career actually at Tesla. I helped lead a program there called the Model 3, which was Tesla's first mass market electric car. And it was an all you can eat buffet of challenges and innovation and opportunities. It was just an amazing experience. And one of the big pain points that really resonated with me was that we were doing all this engineering iteration in these great CAD programs. And then when it came to actually going and finding suppliers and sourcing and negotiating price, it was $30 billion of car parts sourced through spreadsheets and emails. And that just drove me nuts. So tried to find some software that would help us do that work. And then, yeah, discovered that there wasn't anything that really matched what I had in my head for what I thought we needed. And it's sort of a classic story in that way. At a certain point, you think, okay, I have this problem. I can't solve it with what's available. Let me go outside the business and build it. And it's been an amazing adventure also here too at Lightsource. And so, yeah, that's what I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what inspires you most about this, Spencer? What, the work that you get to do and the impact that you guys get to have?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about this all the time. Um, Especially, I'm actually here today in our Chicago office. We have four office locations. We're headquartered in San Francisco, part of Silicon Valley, part of the sort of AI boom. But what inspires me most is actually ironically not the software itself. What inspires me the most is the things that our customers are able to do and achieve in the real world because they're using Lightsource.
Okay.
And so when I think about like our booth and what we presented at this conference we were just at, you know, of course we have, big light source sign, but the thing that was really front and center was a selection of customer products, a Shark Ninja blender, a Shure microphone, which is a great audio device, professional device
It is.
company. Uh,
Got one of those.
you got one of those? Oh yeah, there you go.
I
Yeah, put
love
in the
this
plug.
mic.
It's a great mic, and when I am in my home office being the San Francisco headquarters, I have a SM7DB microphone that I use, and it's so sensitive that people can hear. If I'm like stretching and crack my back, they can hear that on the mic. So it's an amazing device. There's a reason why it's the market share they have with professionals across industries. Um, and so that's what really excites me is seeing what companies are able to build and bring to market. and the speed with which they're able to do it because they have a tool like LightSource. I never think of technology as being the end all be all. I don't want to ever be technology sort of looking for a problem or looking for a use case. I always want to start with what is somebody trying to get done, and then software is just a tool of the mind to help people get that done faster and better. So what excites me is like seeing all the things that people are able to bring into the world, and revitalization of American manufacturing is a second allegory that happens as a result.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what is and you don't have to name names here. You can if you want, totally your call. But
Sure.
what's a result that you guys have helped a client get that you're just incredibly proud of?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So it's funny because in procurement, there's these sort of legacy KPIs that people always think about. One is cost reduction, and the other is resiliency, which is supply chain resilience, a very hot topic, obviously since COVID till today. But the metric that I care about, and that a lot of our customers care about, is their speed.
Okay.
And it's not a traditional KPI, but companies more and more are winning on the basis of their velocity and their ability to outrun the competition, do circles around them. And there's one example that comes to mind very recently. We have a customer that's a big auto manufacturer. You certainly know them. It's one of the few customers where we can't name the name, but this example comes to mind. They developed a vehicle recently, and they started working with LightSource halfway through the program.
Okay.
And at first, I was a little peeved about it, to be honest, because I was like, man, I want the whole vehicle fully end to end, source, designed, supply, industrialization, all through LightSource. But it just so happened we came in and half the car was already done, the other half wasn't. But we got this great accidental A/B case study, I guess you could call it, A/B
Okay.
being before and after.
Yep.
And so the portion of the car that was sourced through LightSource versus the portion of the car that was not,
It was
we
not.
actually saw same team, same vehicle program, very big differences. And the two main KPIs that we saw, key performance indicators, were one was the cycle time reduction. So they were able to actually source those materials 26% faster. And
Okay.
then the second KPI was that they had a 47% reduction in cost creep. And so this is different than cost because when you're developing a vehicle, you don't have a historical basis. And so, but what the problem a lot of times in automotive is that you design something, the supplier says it's $10, you tweak it, they say it's 11, you tweak it again, they say it's 14, because you no longer have the negotiating leverage you've awarded them, et cetera. And so cost creep, everyone starts out setting to build a $25,000 car and it's death by a thousand paper cuts. And so but we were able to see actually a statistically significant reduction in the cost creep over time from their initial design through start of production for the elements of the car that were using light sources, almost a 50% a halving of the cost
Wow.
creep metric, which is
Wow.
really potent. And in automotive, I mean, people don't think about how big the scale is, but at Tesla, I mean, we were making 10 million Model 3s. And so if let's say you saved $2 on a door handle, small, but potatoes, but, you have eight door handles in the car. So that's $16 a car, still a rounding error for a $35,000 vehicle. Who's going to notice $16?
Sure.
But you're making 10 million Model 3s. So that actually equates over the program to $160 million of EBITDA contribution one way or another. So, when you're talking about the scale of manufacturing we see among our customers, the cents really do matter.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, what a great example right there of you're right, of what does it really, lend to the bottom line, and that's a substantial number right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So is there any other kind of result that you want to share, or was you want just want to leave it with there? Is there anything else coming up that you might want to share too?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are tons of examples. I mean, I think another one that's interesting is, I mean, okay, so this is a little bit interesting, but we've got all these great customers. Another one that I think about is Bombardier Recreational Products, BRP. They do Can-Am, Ski-Doo, Sea-Doo
Okay.
vehicles, and they're an incredible innovative company up in Valcourt, Canada, which I would highly recommend folks go visit if they've never been to that area of the country. Um, and one thing that was sort of interesting that we had, I'm thinking about this because we recently had a good an exec review with their team. I was looking at the statistics in their workspace, and it was funny because actually we're procurement software, but two-thirds of the users in their workspace were actually engineers. And
Okay.
so you wonder, like, why is that? How does that, anytime you see something that doesn't match your expectation, you claw in and figure it out. And it turns out that the engineers were actually collaborating much more closely, much more hand in hand with the procurement teams and with the suppliers
Okay.
because they were in a single pane of glass. And so one thing and I don't know the best way to quantify this, but there is a statistic that says that 80% of the cost of a product, whether it's a consumer electronics or a vehicle or a chemicals product or pharma, is baked in by the time that the design is finalized. And there are a lot of, well, firstly, insights that the supplier can bring in terms of innovation, ways to make things more affordable, but
Okay.
also engineering is a very creative field. You have 1,000 ways you could likely solve the same problem. And so bringing in not a waterfall process, which is like design, freeze, then source, freeze, then manufacture. I'm thinking about, from the software landscape, the agile methodology where you can do more things in parallel. It not only shortens your timeline because you're stacking things instead of doing them in sequence, but
Okay.
also you get a lot more innovation and creativity that can yield not just like negotiated outcomes, but structural advantages in the product. So structural
Okay.
cost advantages, structural performance advantages that you can only really get by bringing engineering, procurement, and suppliers into the same pane of glass.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Does that make sense, Kevin? I know it's a
Yeah.
little long-winded answer,
No,
but
but I mean, but you're right. I mean, and it's by bringing the three together, that's
mhm.
what makes the real impact and stuff,
Right.
And and so yeah, I really appreciate you sharing the examples and stuff because now people that are like might hear this that are like in a spot where like you're speaking their language and stuff,
Oh, totally.
and so and that's what I like to do is by having you share some examples of what you've already accomplished. It really helps, like, people listening to this and going like, oh, you know what? Well, maybe they might be able to help us too, or what have you. And so that's what
hmm
my goal is with that. And so now that we've got a little bit of context set here, and people have a little bit of understanding of who you are and what you do and what you guys are all about, Spencer, I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to like spend a little bit of time focused on the relationship side of this. So,
Mm.
have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships, Spencer.
Mm. Yeah, this is a great question. And I think what makes it hard is how do you even come up with one person because, every person you've met is the drives where anybody is today.
You bet.
Um, but there was sort of one big, I would call it, uh, turning point in my sort of life and career that I do think enabled a lot of the things I do today.
Okay.
And it started actually when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Pennsylvania, my alma mater. And I had this guy who lived down in my hall, my freshman dorm, named Dylan. He's still today one of my closest friends. And we got introduced just by the circumstance of being near one another in a dorm, and we became great friends and lived together in college throughout basically the entire time we were there. And I was in going into my senior year, the summer before, I was doing an internship at Goldman Sachs
Okay.
in investment banking, which, if you think about the early, 2010s, it was still it still probably is, but at that time especially, it was a very intense place to work. Now, and it's an elite bank, huge amount of respect for that organization, but truly I was not getting home until 1 or 2 a.m. and was going to be back in the office each morning at least by 9. And so it's a grueling and intense thing. And that summer that I was there, there was actually an intern at I think it was Bank of America who died of exhaustion, which is a crazy thing to think about. So,
Wow.
banking, legendarily tough, right out of college, that kind of thing, first year analyst. And so I remember I was catching up with my buddy Dylan, and I was talking with him about his summer internship, and he told me, by the way, I'm going to stay at Penn for a fifth year I just sort of submitted this application for to do like a 1 year master's. Because if you're an undergrad, they have this program where you can use your senior year plus one additional year to complete both your undergrad and a master's. They call it a submatriculation. Some universities call it coterm. And he said, I'm doing it in computer science. I was like, you're doing it in computer science, but you're a PPE undergrad, which is politics, philosophy, and economics. He's like, yeah, I made a case for why I should be in this program, and I'm really excited about it. And I was like, what was the application like? Do you have to take the GRE? And he said, no, no, you just submit this 1 page form. And I then was like, my mind started turning, and I was like, I've always thought the robotics lab at Penn, the GRASP lab, very famous robotics lab, it's one of the top three in the world. I just thought it'd be so cool to be a part of that. And so I looked at the application, and it was nice. I didn't have to fill out, too much stuff, and I didn't have to take the GRE. And I filled out this 1 pager, and I went to campus a few days earlier, and I submitted it. And I then met with the head of the program, this guy named CJ Taylor, a wonderful professor who ended up becoming an academic advisor of mine.
Okay.
And he sat me down, and we talked through the application. And he said, you are brave but highly underqualified for this master's, and I love the ambition, but I'm just not even sure if you're going to be able to do it, and I don't want to set you up for failure. But I had already done, just of my own volition, a lot of engineering courses in undergrad for fun. Those were all my electives, were mechanical engineering. And so I worked on a plan. Here's how I'm going to sort of get up to speed. He had some ideas about classes that might just give me enough coding, just give me enough linear algebra. And he accepted me into the program, and then I started my undergrad as really a finance devotee, and I ended my undergrad and master's with a real technical understanding, and that was part of what led me to my role at Tesla, which
Wow.
unlocked a huge amount of doors for me. And so I think that there are like these through lines. So I think it was Dylan introducing me to I guess me and getting introduced to Dylan through I guess our resident advisor in our hall to this program, and then that program leading me to be able to have this sort of two-sided coin, which is both business thinking and top level technical knowledge that has been the underpinning of like my entire
Of
career. And
everything you've done.
everything I do, every
Yeah.
single thing, I
Yeah.
always doing both. And when I went to Harvard, same thing. I went back to do another round of grad school, this time doing my MBA and a master's of engineering and computer science at Harvard. And so another 2 degrees. And again, parallel tracking business and technology, which has always been, yeah, the cornerstone of my interests. And there is more overlap than I think people give them credit for. But I think there's a lot of great, and I think there's a lot of great ideas that are driven through interdisciplinary thinking, not just expertise in one field. So I
Okay.
have a lot of thoughts on this too.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So I'm just curious, and this is totally I'm asking this question. This is purely
Sure.
self-serving because I just want to know. Did you get to spend much time around Elon when you were at Tesla?
Yeah, of course. I did get to work with Elon. I'll never forget my first meeting with him, going into there was sort of like this conference room at the Fremont factory. And I don't know if at the time he was sleeping there or not, but there was a period of time where he was sleeping in the factory.
Okay.
And he was basically, he would sit in this conference room for like a good portion of the day, and he would have back-to-back meetings, and people would come in, a senior leader and then some other folks. He had his chief of staff, this guy named Sam Teller, and we would come and just present things to him that required his decision. And he's an amazing, brilliant guy, uh, enigmatic in like 100 different ways. And at the time, like he was already, you know, quite a serious entrepreneur. I mean, he was one of the most famous people I ever interacted with, or richest people I ever knew, but he was definitely not the richest person in the world. I think that's like another echelon. And he was at Tesla 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so you needed to get in front of him to make decisions, if you wanted those decisions to be final. So there's this guy who's his like, maybe the second in command, this amazing executive called named Doug Field. And Doug ran a lot of engineering and all of manufacturing operations. And so if you wanted to get something approved, you could go to Doug, 7 days a week. Um, but it would be Doug approved. So people would say, "Hey, have you run this by exec?" Yeah, but it's Doug approved, which meant that it was mostly approved. But if you wanted to make sure it was like really locked in, it had to be Elon approved. And so you'd have to meet with him, and he was just swiping left and swiping right on major decisions basically all day. And depending on his mood, you might want to bring him more or less good news or bad news, depending on what the previous people said his state of mind was for the day. But when he's in a good mood, he's always making jokes. He's really collaborative and thoughtful. Um, he's a human, so he doesn't have technical knowledge on every single surface, but he does have a pretty good breadth of experience in a lot of different areas, and good clarity of thought. I mean, the man also works extremely hard. You know, I can't imagine, how he's able to swing all the different companies he does
Yeah.
support at one given time. I think
Yeah.
that's probably also a big reason why there's that sort of the ideas right now around the merger, right? I'm sure you've seen SpaceX is
Yeah.
on a path toward an IPO. Um, and they just announced this sort of cursor acquisition. They acquired X.AI, which is another Elon company. They're also acquiring potentially Cursor for $60 billion. They announced that yesterday. And then it's going to be part of this big IPO bundle. And then once it's in the market priced effectively, then I think they're probably, if I had to guess, I have no knowledge of this, but this is my guess
Mhm.
as an outsider, that they would pursue some kind of merger. And then finally Elon can have one job. It'll be like the CEO of whatever. I don't know what the combined entity is going to be,
Yeah.
Tesla X. I don't know, but it'll be something.
That's a good guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that because it's that's I just find that fascinating, and you're right, you didn't see it back then, but now you see it, richest man in the world. I mean, it's something else. And like you said, man,
Yeah.
it's I think it's opened a lot of people's minds to what's really possible,
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so, yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
piggybacking
I mean,
on that, what's your vision from your current vantage point? What's your vision for Light Source?
yeah, of course. So our vision is very simple, and it's to help the challenger companies bring their product to market faster. And so I think we've seen this across a lot of different industries. You see, I'm going to create a false dichotomy here, but two kinds of companies. You have the legacy incumbents, and you have the up and coming challengers.
Okay.
And so in every industry, you see Shark Ninja is the up and coming high velocity challenger in the consumer electronic space versus or consumer appliance, versus you might think about like a Black and Decker or more legacy, or a KitchenAid, that kind of thing. Same products for 30 years, which is great, but it's different. You start to see like Hims and Hers, which is a very modern, high distribution, high velocity pharma company versus the legacy incumbents. Whether it's Pfizer or somebody else. You see companies like Tesla um, versus GM and Ford. You see in the aerospace and defense arena, Anduril is able to develop new many platforms in parallel, much like a software company would, before a company like Lockheed or Boeing is able to even get their initial proposals out the door. Anduril can come with a full prototype. So there is a new generation of companies that are winning, actually. And I think that's the thing that Elon's opened people's eyes to, which is it is actually possible. That's to me the thing he's really opened people's eyes to, which is it is possible for somebody else to win. Because when I joined Tesla, it was a boutique car business, and everyone told me that it was a big career mistake. And they said it was like you couldn't get through to folks. It was like either electric cars are a terrible idea, it'll never be someone's main car, it's going to fail. If it does succeed, then the big three are going to wipe the court with their dust.
Mm.
And so it'll always be the big three autos that win. What I think people didn't expect is it was going to be Tesla winning, and then like a whole entourage of super high velocity Chinese OEMs that have come out of the contract manufacturing mire. The same thing with space. I mean, it's crazy to think that, okay, like, NASA has a monopoly on space, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, when they're trying to get to the ISS, they're calling SpaceX in to do work for them and also to clean up Boeing's mess. When Boeing, you remember a few years ago, Boeing wasn't able to get the astronauts back from the
That's right.
ISS.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
then they had to stay in space for like another 3 months or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And then SpaceX, which was much more nimble, was able to go and do it.
Yeah.
And so I think for a long time, there's a traditional mindset, which is that the challenger can't win against the legacy incumbent. It's too hard, it's too complicated, there's too much entrenched interest. And then I think what Elon has really opened up for people, as you've sort of I think keenly identified, is the ability for the challengers to really to take that sort of spot of primacy. Now, how do they do it? They do it through what I would call innovation and technical superiority that leads them to speed. And so that's the thing that gets me very excited about LightSource. And I said at the beginning, it's not just, I mean, the platform is amazing. It's an AI native operating system for direct materials. We connect with the PLM, we pull in all the engineering drawings, we help you find suppliers, negotiate pricing, track your costed BOM, and in essence, create a collaborative ecosystem for your engineering, procurement, and suppliers to all collaborate. But the end results are that companies who are trying to make change in the world are able to develop their market, they develop their product and bring it to market faster and at a more competitive price and win. And that's the
Yes.
thing that gets me really excited. And so, what I would like, my vision for the company is that we are, that just as Salesforce is this CRM for all sales folks,
Yep.
that LightSource is the supplier and product relationship management solution on the back end. So people sell through Salesforce and they buy through LightSource at the strategic direct materials level. We're
Oh.
not going to ever focus on tail spend. Like, we don't help. I mean, people think procurement, they think, oh, you'll help me buy a stapler for the office or like a chair or a laptop. That's not what we do at all. There's so many ways to just buy what they call tail or indirect spend. What we're really focused on is direct materials, which is the 80% of spend. It's not on purchase cards, it's in the ERP. It is highly specified, often custom, involves engineering, but it's not just like the nice to have on the margin. It is the core column of
Yep.
any manufacturing or product business. And I want us to be the operating system, the technical twin to help the people who manage those programs to operate and ultimately deliver their product to market faster and cheaper. And so that's the dream. And so my dream is that our customers, we'll say, okay, here's all the 10 biggest companies in 2040, and it's like they all use LightSource to win
Yeah.
and build prosperity for people domestically and our allies abroad.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. Well,
Yeah,
I for anyone who might be listening to this and thinking to themselves, "Man, Kev, I'm really glad you interviewed Spencer for this because, man, I'm what some of the stuff he shares really got me thinking, and maybe he
yeah,
might be able to help us, or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else that I know I want to connect them with. So any website, any resources we can share with folks? What's the best way?
yeah. Of course. There's two main places where you can get in contact. And I would ask you to like invite anybody who's listening. If anything I've said you agree with or disagree with, but you want to engage, reach out. The best place to do that is through our website,
Okay.
lightsource.ai, or they can find me on LinkedIn and just add me, and I'll accept and I'll respond.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Spencer, is there any last thing that you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Well, I'm curious when you ask this question, how do people usually respond?
Well,
Like, what are the good answers?
there's a lot of different responses. Um, I mean, you just have such a just a unique background and stuff, and what we were talking about here about the underdog being able to win, man,
Yeah,
I love that because there's so many of us. I bet a big percentage of your clients, a huge percentage of them, consider themselves the underdog, and that you are helping them win and stuff. And I think there's a huge percentage of the folks in my audience that are entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs that consider themselves the underdog. And just watching what's going on, they do feel that they can win. And so I don't know, maybe
yeah,
just speaking to that and stuff.
yeah. I mean, there's this great book. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell,
Oh
the
yeah.
author.
Oh yeah.
He's a wonderful. I've actually had a few opportunities to meet him in person. He has this great book called David and Goliath, and this is not what I would call like deep niche literature. I mean, this is like a very popular,
Yeah.
well-read business book that's easy to read and it's just delicious. I would just really recommend it. But one of the things that he said in that book, I was on a run when I was in Harvard. I was running along the Charles River, and I was just listening to it actually as audiobook. And there was a quote that he said that I stopped my run, I paused it, I listened to it again, I wrote it down, and the quote was, there is a certain set of advantages that come from having material resources, and there's a certain set of advantages that come from having a lack of material resources. And sometimes the reason why underdogs win as often as they do is because the latter is sometimes as potent or more than the former. And that was the premise of the book, which is that when you're the underdog, when you have a lack of material resources, you have to get creative. I mean, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And sometimes companies get hamstrung simply because they have uh, the luxury of time, or they have the luxury of capital, or they have the luxury of excess staffing, and then they get themselves tied up in a rat's nest.
Yeah.
And I do think that, you know, there's something, I guess, refreshing about the idea of, okay, what we're trying to do is unreasonable, and reasonable people won't try
Yeah.
because it's unreasonable. But then you look at the folks who have actually made changes in the world, and they were all unreasonable. And
You
so I
bet.
think that's ultimately the real superpower of Elon is not his ability to influence other people, but his ability to resist influence from other people
Yeah.
and to stay the course on the things he wants to do, no matter who's telling him no. Um, so that would be my advice to anybody. That's the thing I would share, is that there is something special about the underdogs, and it comes down to using your own brain,
Yeah.
and thinking about what's possible, and then saying we have to do it, and then figuring out the people who are also crazy enough to want to do it too.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Spencer, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. I'm excited to get this out there and share it with folks. So thank you so much.
Kevin, thank you for having me. I loved our conversation, as I always have, and I'm glad we're able to share with your audience.
Yeah, for sure.